First contact. The Varine had always considered themselves unfortunate among the spacefaring races. Their homeworld, Varsis, orbited a dying star, a fact that had pushed their civilization to achieve faster-than-light travel out of sheer desperation rather than curiosity. Yet despite this achievement, they remained largely ignored by the greater galactic community, seen as refugees rather than equals. Commander Zaraval stood at the observation deck of the Varsis Science Institute, her iridescent scales reflecting the dim light of their failing sun. The latest readings confirmed what they had feared. They had perhaps 50 years before the star's death would force a complete evacuation. Their colonial efforts had been promising but slow, hampered by limited resources and the indifference of other species. Commander, her assistant's voice crackled through the communication device. We've detected something unusual. You should come to the signal analysis lab immediately. In the lab, dozens of scientists huddled around holographic displays, their usual professional detachment replaced by barely contained excitement. Chief Analyst Kurgen beckoned her over to the central console. "We'd picked this up from the direction of the Orion arm," he explained, manipulating the display to show a complex waveform. "At first we thought it was natural phenomenon, but look at the pattern structure." Zaraval studied the readings. "This is artificial. Definitely. But it's unlike anything in our database. It's not from any known civilization." The signal was elegant in its simplicity, a mathematical sequence that could only be intentional. What made it remarkable was the power behind it. Whatever civilization had sent this had access to energy resources that made the Varine's technology look primitive by comparison. Over the next few days, more signals were detected. The Varine's best cryptographers worked tirelessly to decode them, and gradually a picture emerged. They called themselves humans, and they were reaching out to the stars, seeking contact with other intelligent life. The Galactic Council dismissed the Varine's discovery. Another primitive species, they said. Let them develop on their own. But the Varine saw something different in these transmissions, a reflection of their own desperate reach for the stars. Against the Council's recommendations, Zaraval authorized a response. The message was simple: coordinates for a meeting in neutral space, along with basic information about their species and situation. They expected to wait months or years for a reply. The response came 3 days later. The human ship that arrived at the designated coordinates was unlike anything the Varine had ever seen. Where their own vessels were sleek and standardized, this ship bore the marks of improvisation and creativity. Multiple design philosophies merged into something uniquely functional. First contact was handled through visual communications. The humans, with their bizarre bilateral symmetry and soft exteriors, should have seemed vulnerable. Instead, they projected an air of confident curiosity that immediately put the Varian delegation at ease. "We understand you're facing a stellar crisis," the human representative, Dr. Sarah Chen, said after initial pleasantries were exchanged. "We'd like to help." The Varian delegation was stunned. Other species had offered help before, but always with steep prices attached. "What would you want in return?" Zaraval asked cautiously. The human smiled, an expression the Varine would come to associate with both warmth and unpredictability. "Knowledge. Partnership. We're new to the galactic community, and we have much to learn. Besides," she added, "helping people is what humans do best." It was the beginning of a relationship that would change not just the Varine, but the entire galaxy. Though none of them knew it yet, humanity's entry onto the galactic stage would upset millennia of established power structures and challenge fundamental assumptions about the nature of civilization itself. The Varine would later be asked why they trusted these unknown beings so quickly. Zaraval's answer became legend. Because when they looked at our dying star, they didn't see a doomed species to exploit. They saw a problem to solve. The Great Exchange. The human delegation's arrival on Varsis caused a sensation. Despite the Galactic Council's warnings about allowing an unproven species such direct access to their homeworld, the Varine had little to lose and potentially everything to gain. Dr. Chen's team immediately set to work analyzing the dying star, but it was their casual interactions with the Varine that proved most revolutionary. Where other species carefully guarded their technological and cultural knowledge, the humans shared freely, everything from engineering principles to Earth's entertainment media. Your people's approach to problem-solving is unusual, Kurgen observed one day, watching a human engineer jury-rig a compatibility system between their technologies using what looked like spare parts and optimism. The engineer, Marcus Rodriguez, laughed. Humans have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When you can't find a perfect solution, you make an imperfect one work. This philosophy permeated everything the humans did. Their ships weren't the most advanced in terms of raw technology, but they were infinitely adaptable. Their scientific theories sometimes seemed to border on imagination, but they produced results that couldn't be argued with. Most shocking to the Varine was the humans' internal diversity. Other spacefaring races had generally achieved unity through conformity. The Galactic Council itself was founded on principles of standardization. Humans, by contrast, seemed to thrive on disagreement and debate. How do you make decisions when your people have so many different opinions? Zaraval asked Dr. Chen during one of their regular meetings. We vote, we compromise, we argue, and sometimes we agree to disagree, Sarah explained. But it's exactly that diversity that gives us strength. Different perspectives mean different solutions. The truth of this became apparent as the human team made progress on the stellar problem. Where Varine scientists had approached it as a single insurmountable challenge, the humans broke it down into smaller, manageable pieces. Some worked on extending the star's life, others on improving evacuation efficiency, and still others on terraforming techniques for colony worlds. But it wasn't all work. Humans introduced the Varine to concepts like movie night and sports tournaments. Cultural exchange flowed both ways. Humans proved surprisingly adept at learning the complex harmonics of Varine musical traditions, while Varine youth became obsessed with human dance styles. The Galactic Council watched these developments with growing concern. The established order had always been based on careful regulation of technological and cultural exchange. Humans seemed to ignore these conventions entirely, freely sharing everything from fusion dry specifications to recipes for something called pizza. Your council representatives have expressed concern about our, what did they call it? Destabilizing influence, Sarah mentioned to Zaraval during one of their discussions. Zaraval's scales shifted in what humans had learned was amusement. They're not wrong. You are destabilizing things, but maybe some things need to be destabilized. The breakthrough came 6 months after the humans' arrival. Marcus's team had developed a method to stabilize the star's degradation using a combination of Varine particle physics and human theoretical models. It wouldn't save the star forever, but it would buy them centuries instead of decades. It's not a permanent solution, Marcus admitted during the presentation to the Varine Science Council, but it gives us time to develop one. That phrase, "it gives us time to develop one," captured something fundamental about humanity that the Varine were beginning to understand. Humans didn't wait for perfect solutions. They found ways to keep moving forward, to buy time, to make things work just a little bit longer until something better could be developed. The Varine's decision to trust humanity was proving to be more revolutionary than anyone had imagined. But as news of their success spread through the galaxy, other forces were taking notice. The stability of the Galactic Council had always depended on maintaining certain hierarchies and limitations. A species that simply ignored these constraints while achieving the impossible was more than an anomaly. It was a threat. As celebrations began on Varsis, messages were being exchanged in dark corners of space. The humans had proven themselves too dangerous to ignore. Something would have to be done about them. In her quarters, Sarah Chen received an urgent transmission from Earth. As she read it, her usual smile faded. Humanity's help of the Varine had drawn attention, not all of it welcome. The very qualities that made humans unique in the galaxy had also made them targets. The real test of human ingenuity and Varine loyalty was about to begin. Crisis point. The attack came without warning. One moment, the Varine's newest colony world, Nova Varsis, was celebrating the successful implementation of human terraforming techniques. The next, its orbital defense grid went dark as unknown ships appeared in the system. They're using Council signature protocols. Kurgen reported, his scales pale with shock as he analyzed the data. But these attack patterns are definitely not Council standard. Sarah Chen finished, watching the tactical display with narrow eyes. She'd seen enough of the Council's military doctrine to know this was something else entirely. This is someone trying to make it look like Council enforcement. The attackers struck with surgical precision, targeting primarily human facilities and technology. But they hadn't counted on one crucial factor. After months of cooperation, it was nearly impossible to separate human and Varine operations. Every attack on a human facility also crippled essential Varine infrastructure. Emergency channels lit up across the galaxy. Similar attacks were happening at every world where humans had helped developing civilizations. The message was clear. Accept help from humans. Face the consequences. In the Varsis Command Center, Zara Val made a decision that would change galactic history. "We're not evacuating the human personnel," she announced, to the shock of her advisors. "The Varine stand with our allies." Sarah's communicator chimed with an urgent message from Earth. She read it, then looked up at Zara Val with an expression the Varine commander had learned to recognize. The human was about to suggest something either brilliant or insane. "Earth is proposing something called Protocol Omega," Sarah said. "But we'll need your people's complete cooperation, and it will violate about 15 different Council regulations." "Only 15. Zaraval's scales flickered in what humans now recognized as ironic amusement. "Proceed." The next 48 hours demonstrated why humanity had survived every crisis in its history. Where other species sought perfect solutions, humans excelled at the art of controlled chaos. They transformed civilian cargo ships into improvised military vessels. Mining equipment was repurposed into defensive weaponry. The Varine's atmospheric processors, integrated with human AI systems, became planet-wide early warning networks. But the masterstroke came from Marcus Rodriguez, who had been studying the Varine's stellar stabilization technology. Their ships use standard Council quantum tunneling for FTL travel, he explained during an emergency briefing. "What if we could disrupt that?" The plan was audacious. They would modify the stellar stabilization field around Varsis, creating a cascade effect that would make quantum tunneling impossible within the system. Any ships using standard Council FTL drives would be forced into normal space, right into the waiting arms of the combined human-Varine defense fleet. "It's never been done before," one of the Varine scientists protested. "That's what makes it perfect," Sarah replied. "They won't have prepared for it because no one would think to try it." The modification would also temporarily destabilize Varsis's sun, accelerating its decay. They would have hours, at most, to defeat the attackers before having to restore the stabilization field. As they prepared for the counterattack, Sarah received another message from Earth. She read it in private, her face growing grave. Intelligence suggested this attack was just the beginning. A faction within the Galactic Council, fearful of humanity's growing influence, had decided to make an example of anyone who accepted human aid. But they had underestimated both humanity's resourcefulness and the loyalty they'd inspired in their allies. As the trap was sprung and enemy ships were forced out of FTL travel, they found themselves facing not just human and Varine ships, but vessels from a dozen other minor species who had benefited from human assistance. The battle that followed would become known as the Nova Varsis Gambit. The attackers, exposed and outnumbered, were quickly overwhelmed. Interrogation of captured officers revealed the truth. They were mercenaries hired by a coalition of Council hardliners, tasked with disguising their attacks as official Council punishment. The victory proved Pyrrhic. The modified stabilization field had taken a greater toll on Varsis's sun than predicted. They had won the battle, but the Varine homeworld was now in greater danger than ever. As Zaraval and Sarah watched the damage reports come in, the human turned to her friend. "I have an idea," she said, "but you're probably not going to like it." The Varine commander's scales shifted to a pattern that humans had learned meant resigned amusement. Only 15 council regulations this time. Sarah's smile was grim. "Oh no, this one's going to break all of them." The real war, not just for survival, but for the future of galactic civilization itself, was about to begin. Breaking all the rules. Sarah Chen's plan was precisely what Zaraval had expected from a human. Brilliant, terrifying, and completely unprecedented in galactic history. The Varine commander found herself wondering, not for the first time, how humans managed to survive long enough to reach the stars with this kind of thinking. "You want to move Varsis," she stated flatly, her scales shifting through colors that reflected disbelief, fear, and, though she never admitted, excitement. "Not the planet itself," Sarah corrected, manipulating the holographic display to show her proposal. "Just everything on it. Every person, every building, every artifact of your civilization. We'll transfer it all to Nova Varsis." The scope of the operation was staggering. It would require every transport ship they could gather, not just from human space and Varine territories, but from all their allies. More than that, it would require breaking the most fundamental law of the Galactic Council, the prohibition against sharing planetary terraforming technology. "The Council maintains power through scarcity," Marcus explained, joining the briefing. "They control which species get to expand, which get to survive. But we've never believed in artificial limitations." The human engineering team had already begun modifying their terraforming systems. Nova Varsis would be transformed into a perfect replica of the Varine homeworld. Identical gravity, atmospheric composition, even the same geological features. The only difference would be a healthy star with billions of years of life ahead of it. As word of the plan spread, something unprecedented began to happen. Ships started arriving in the Varsis system, not just from their known allies, but from species they'd never contacted. Species who had been watching, waiting, hoping for someone to finally challenge the Council's restrictions. "Every civilization in this galaxy has lost something to the Council's regulations," Sarah told Zaraval as they watched the growing fleet. "A homeworld, a colony, a chance to expand. They're not just helping us, they're helping themselves." The operation was named Project Legacy. It would either mark the beginning of a new era in galactic civilization or become a cautionary tale about human hubris. Either way, it would be remembered. The Council's response was swift and predictable. They declared all participating species to be in violation of galactic law. Sanctions were imposed. Threats were made. But for the first time in living memory, their threats rang hollow. Too many species had seen what was possible when the artificial restrictions were lifted. The evacuation itself became a testament to both human ingenuity and Varine determination. Human AI systems coordinated the massive fleet of transport ships, while Varine archaeologists and historians ensured no artifact of their civilization was left behind. Even the mercenaries who had attacked them, now freed from their council contracts, joined the effort. Marcus led the terraforming operation on Nova Varsis, combining human creativity with Varine precision. Mountains were raised to match the sacred peaks of Old Varsis. Oceans were seeded with Varine marine life. Even the magnetic field was tuned to match their original home, ensuring the Varine's magnetically sensitive scales would feel no difference. But the Council had one last card to play. As the evacuation reached its final stages, a massive Council enforcement fleet appeared at the edge of the system. Their demand was simple: surrender all human technology and return to Council authority, or face immediate destruction. Sarah and Zaraval stood together on the command deck of the last evacuation ship, watching the Council fleet approach. The humans had prepared for this moment, but their countermeasure was their riskiest gambit yet. "Are you sure about this?" Zaraval asked her friend. Sarah's smile held that peculiar mix of confidence and mischief that the Varine had come to associate with humans about to do something impossible. Not even slightly. But that's never stopped us before. She opened a channel to the combined fleet. Execute Protocol Prometheus. Across human space and in every system where humans had shared their knowledge, thousands of quantum communicators activated simultaneously. The gathered data from Project Legacy, every detail of the terraforming process, every specification of human technology, every breakthrough they'd achieved, was broadcast across the galaxy. The Council's knowledge monopoly, maintained for millennia, broke in an instant. You can threaten us. Sarah's voice rang across all frequencies, but you can't threaten an idea. And you can't stop a people determined to survive. The Council fleet commanders faced a choice. Fire on civilians conducting a peaceful evacuation, proving every fear about Council tyranny correct, or withdraw and deal with the new reality they faced. As the Council ships powered down their weapons, Zoraval turned to Sarah. You knew they wouldn't fire. I hope they wouldn't. Sarah corrected. Humans are good at hope. Sometimes it's all we have. The last ships left Varsis as its sun began its final phase of collapse. But they didn't leave in defeat. They left having changed the fundamental balance of power in the galaxy. The age of artificial scarcity was over. As they approached Nova Varsis, where a new chapter of Varine civilization would begin, Zoraval realized something about humans that she should have seen from the start. Their greatest strength wasn't their technology or their creativity or even their determination. It was their ability to make others believe in impossible things. Legends of Tomorrow. 50 years after the Great Migration, as it came to be known, a young Varine student stood before the monument of first contact on Nova Varsis. The massive sculpture depicted two figures, a human and a Varine, reaching out to each other across a void of space. At its base, written in both human standard and Varine script, were the words, "Because they saw a problem to solve." The student, Kiralen, was working on her thesis about the human impact on galactic civilization. She had grown up hearing the stories, how humans had helped save her people, how they had broken the Council's monopoly on technological advancement, how they had changed everything. But like many of her generation, she sometimes wondered if the stories had grown in the telling. You're wondering if we've turned them into myths, a familiar voice said behind her. Kiralen turned to find herself face to face with Commander Zoraval, now well over 150 cycles old but still sharp-eyed and alert. Honored Elder, Kiralen bowed respectfully. Yes, the stories seem almost too perfect sometimes. Zoraval's scales rippled with amusement. Walk with me, she said, leading the young student toward the memorial gardens. Here, exact replicas of Varsis's ancient monuments stood alongside new creations that celebrated the merger of human and Varine culture. The humans changed us, Zoraval began, not just by saving our star or helping us move our civilization, but by showing us a different way to think. Before them, we saw limitations as absolute. After them, she gestured at the thriving city around them. We learned to see possibilities. The aftermath of Project Legacy had reshaped galactic politics. The Council, its power broken by the mass distribution of human technology, had reformed into a more equitable federation. Species that had been kept dependent for millennia began to flourish. New alliances formed. New technologies emerged from the combination of different scientific traditions. But where are they now? Kiralen asked the question that had puzzled scholars for decades. After their victory, humans had gradually withdrawn from galactic affairs. Their ships became rare sights in most systems. Some said they had found new challenges to tackle, new civilizations to help. Others believed they had transcended physical form entirely. Zoraval smiled, her scales shifting to the pattern that humans had taught them meant fond remembrance. Sarah Chen told me something once, just before the humans began their withdrawal. She said, the best teachers know when to step back and let their students find their own way. They reached a particular monument, a simple holographic display showing the original Varsus star in its final moments. Humans never wanted to rule or control. They wanted to inspire. And look what that inspiration has created. Around them, Nova Varsus hummed with energy. Ships from 100 species docked at its spaceports. The original terraforming technology humans had shared had been refined and improved by generations of collaborative research. The city itself was a testament to what could be achieved when artificial barriers were removed and species worked together freely. But surely you must miss them, Kirillin asked. Your friends? Miss them? Zaraval's scales shifted to a color humans had never had a chance to name, one that meant understanding of deep truths. Child, look around you. Look at how we solve problems now. Look at how we face challenges. Look at how we help others without asking what we'll get in return. The humans never left. They taught us how to be more like them. She pointed to a group of young Varine scientists working with representatives from former council worlds on a new type of quantum drive. We were not the only ones they helped, not the only ones they taught. And now we help others, who will help others in turn. That was always their goal, not to rule a galaxy, but to teach it how to help itself. Kirillin looked at her research notes with new eyes. So when people say humans were like gods, Zaraval laughed. No, they were something far more important. They were teachers. They showed us what was possible, then trusted us to find our own way forward. She touched the monument base gently. That's why this inscription is so perfect. They didn't see problems as obstacles. They saw them as opportunities to make things better. As they walked back through the city, Kirillin noticed something she'd never paid attention to before. Every major scientific institute, every engineering facility, every center of learning had the same motto carved above its doors. What problem can we solve today? It wasn't just a question. It was humanity's greatest legacy, teaching the galaxy not just to survive, but to thrive through constant innovation and cooperation. The stories aren't myths, Zaraval said finally, but they're not complete either. The real story isn't about what humans did for us. It's about what they taught us to do for ourselves. Above them, Nova Varsus's sun shone brightly, not just on the Varine, but on a galaxy forever changed by a species that had dared to imagine something better and had taught others to do the same. A young species had reached out to the stars not seeking power or dominion, but looking for friends and problems to solve. In doing so, they had achieved something far greater than conquest. They had created a legacy of hope, innovation, and cooperation that would endure long after the last human ship had vanished into the infinite depths of space. And somewhere out there, humanity continued its journey, seeking new challenges, new friends, and new problems to solve. Because that's what humans do best.